Thanks for joining us for our December Power Hour daytime edition. I am Tessa in Indiana, joined by Megan, who is out in Washington State. And we are going to talk about two layouts today and get through probably about an hour. We'll see. I put roughly on the thing. I know a couple of you caught that. Roughly an hour. We usually go over a little bit, but so I'm going to get started. If you have your handout, like Megan said, have a pencil in case we have any adjustments, but we can start moving right along if you want to. We'll flip down to my table, bring this down a little bit. So I actually started out with Christmas, so Joy to the World, which is still available right now. I've decided that it is one of the, I like it a lot compared to more our recent collection. It has a little bit more icons and things to work with. So I pulled it out to work on. My sister gave me some extra photos. On the pictures I posted, I didn't have photos on here yet, but I worked on this layout with a decorative trimmer. So it's a pretty simple layout. It really won't take us too long to get through. But when you're picking out your paper, you're going to need cardstock base or a tonal base. So when Megan and I referred to statement prints and tonal prints, this I would consider a statement print. It has a bold design, several colors in it, and then a tonal print, which has more of a two-tone monochromatic type of print to it. And you'll want two coordinating papers for your print. One thing I did not know on the handout that is something to be conscientious of is the direction of your print. My floral was a non-directional. So when we cut our strips, they're going to go vertical and they're going to go horizontal. So you're going to make sure when you choose your print that you choose one that's okay being both vertical and horizontal. Once you cut your paper one way, you're not going to be able to have it be both ways. But there are a lot of prints, even maybe sideways, will look well. So we're going to talk through that, and then I'll show you two at the end. We'll have a layout I put together kind of as a bonus using some of our extra cut pieces. So I'll show you that again at the end. So I use Christmas, like I said, Joy to the World. I have we're talking about photos a little bit. So the layout in general gives you a nice wide open space for lots of photos with different options. I chose a 5x7 peekaboo for this one. So if any of you tuned in earlier this week when I did my Wanderlust Fast to Fab album walkthrough, I had a couple of 5x7s in there, and one of them I made a little collage with. And so that was the intent of using 5x7 here. When I actually got the photos out, my sister was pretty zoomed in the pictures. I couldn't crop them down as much as I had hoped to. So I used the opportunity. I'll still have the 5x7 peekaboo, but I can double mat a 4x6, have more of a highlight photo, and then it will flap open. And I have another 4x6 double matted here on the 5x7 of my nephew. And then I was able to cut down a couple of photos to fit behind that 5x7. I wasn't able to find small enough photos to put in my little squares, but the top one is going to be journaling. The bottom one will probably embellishments and stickers. But tragedy is I can't find my Joy to the World stickers. I don't know where they got slid into. I know I have them and I'll probably find them tomorrow, but I left those spots open so I can decorate that a little bit. Over here on the suggested mats, like I said, these can all be changed or edited. This is a 4.5x6.5, so I was able to put a 4x6, which you could peekaboo. Then these are 4x4. And so I just cut my pictures down a little bit smaller than 4x4 to fit there. So I'm going to choose my paper for today. So I still had more photos from her. And I'm going to work on a baby layout. So I chose, most of these papers are from Lullaby Lane Boy. And so I found a tonal base. This is blue. It does have a little bit of direction in the pattern, only that they need to be, I think you can kind of tell if they're not lined up the same direction, but it doesn't really matter which direction. For my statement print, I actually chose this one that had some kind of a starry night themed. It's dark. It's a pretty fine print, kind of small. But then when you choose your statement print and you want to choose two papers to coordinate with it, I had to rule out several of them in this back because of the direction of the print. It was not going to look great, horizontal and vertical. But I have the little blue heart, so these will be fine, even turned on a direction. And then I'm going to cut this stripe. It's actually the back of this. I'm not sure if I'm going to like this as a cut when it has kind of the open white. I don't always like the way that looks, but I'm going to cut a strip and see. If I don't like it, I pulled out this, which is just kind of more of a basic tonal print also to coordinate with it. So those are the papers I chose. And then I did go through my cardstock stash. We'll see how it works. I got light gray, basalt, and sky gray to coordinate as needed for mats and such. The only tools you really need are, you want to have your trimmer handy, but the decorative trimmer is what we're going to be using today. I still have the old blue one. The current one, if you have that, is white and has blue blades, but they all work the same. They all have the same lineup to them. Find my handout to make sure I have to follow along with myself to make sure I created it correctly. So on the 12-inch trimmer, if I know a lot of you guys follow Meggan, so you're probably pretty well versed in the decorative trimmer, but to center your paper, there's little squares, little grid design, and you'll want to go down one and up one to center your paper when you cut. So we're going to start with the statement print. The first thing you have to do is just give yourself the first swell edge. And so I'm going to line up my paper just at that first to give myself one grid, one row over. I'm centered, so one down, one up. And this is an extra piece, but you can save it. And at the end, I'm going to show you the border I made with my extra pieces. And then I want to cut 4 1-inch strips. And so I'm going to measure all the way to the edge of the trimmer. And I'll need 4 of these. I'm using a scrap, so I might run out and I have another sheet. Does not look like I'll be able to get all 4 from here. The back of this is that horizontal, so I'm going to make sure I cut it so that the horizontal is the way I want it, so that if I do like this, so you can see here when I cut the back of this, it cut against the stripes, and so that's the look I'm looking for to see if I like it or not. Because I'm starting a new sheet, I have to go ahead and trim my swell edge again, and then I need one more to measure at 1 inch. And then I need to cut my tonal paper. So it's the same concept. We're just cutting them a little bit thinner. These are going to be 1/2 inch. I need 4 of them. We need 2 for each side. Someone commented that my nephew is such a cutie. He really is a cutie. He's actually 2 now. If any of you are actually friends with me on Facebook, you need to go to my page and watch the video I shared of him last week. I wasn't there. My sister shared it. It is one of the funniest videos I've ever seen. So go watch that if you want to have a good laugh. Okay, so that's 4 with that one. And then I need to decide if I want to use the stripes or if I want to cut this dotted one. So I'm fortunate that the statement print is the stripes on the back. So I can kind of see how these are going to lay together. See if I like the combination, if I want to cut. It would be thinner. It's going to be 1/2 inch, not the 1 inch. I think it's okay, but I think I would like the dots better. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the dots. I need 4 of this one also. you're just watching, you can let us know how you are prepping for the holidays. I do not feel like it's December. It has been pretty warm here, and we haven't done anything other than put up our tree. It does not feel very festive. I haven't even been listening to Christmas music, I realized. Okay, so we're going to lay out our strips. We're going to lay them in place so we can make sure we like how they look. We're going to center the 1 inch between the 2 1/2 inches. So you'll need to decide which color you want on top, which one you want on the bottom. I usually do dark on the outside. And you'll be able to choose. I have mine setting so that the big bump faces out. And I have to make sure that my hearts might end up being upside down. Well, I guess we'll have upside down hearts. I don't even think you can tell they're hearts unless you get pretty up close to it. I might be able to flip them all. So if I wanted my hearts to go opposite, I would just have to, they would have to sit like this, which is fine also. I guess I'll just flip them. So once you kind of know how you want them to sit, then you can start adhering them. So I started adhering them on the outside and worked my way in. I did use a 13 by 13 mat because I'm going to adhere them about 1/2 inch from the edge. If you want as much space as possible for your photos, if you know you have a lot of photos, you can push this all the way up to about 1/4 inch off the edge if you want. I'm going to use repositional tape. And I'm just going to start working my way across. Did any of you guys do any baking? I don't do the baking so much anymore, but Cooper is infamous now for his candied pecans. Megan started asking me in October when she was going to get her candied pecan. I do have a couple of batches done from him, but he hasn't made all of them yet.
I actually started asking in September. Remember, I was going to go buy him like a 5-pound bag of pecans while I was there.
Yeah.
And you told me I couldn't.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Yeah, when you were here. Yeah. They're hard to stay out of. I've been snacking on them. He hasn't been able to finish him yet. He got sick, so I haven't allowed him to touch anything this week, but maybe next week. He did the lighting for he does stage crew in the theater department, and they had the show choir Winter Spectacular over the weekend, and he did lighting for it. But it's funny, when I was waiting for him on Saturday, I heard 2 of the moms talking about how many kids were already sick. And I was like, interesting. This happened after the musical also. A bunch of kids got sick. And sure enough, he was sick by Monday. So apparently when you have one kid has one thing and you all sing all over each other, everyone gets it.
Oh,
in the week following.
My child did like an internship at the community theater place just north of us, and they were very, very adamant about the kids needed to wear masks while they were doing rehearsals and stuff. Like, I don't know that the performers necessarily did. Maybe they did. They practiced in masks, but their performances, they weren't wearing them. But they were like, they're trying everything to keep the kids from getting sick, because once one gets sick, that all goes downhill.
Well, it happens. So now I'm just hoping Campbell doesn't. doesn't get it. I think she actually gets sick less because of how active she is. He's not as active as her. Um, Obviously she's having issues today of the female sort that have nothing to do with that, but so the King Pecans will be coming, is my point. And then Campbell has a team soccer practice tomorrow night, and they can take stuff. And she wants to make those Nutter Butter reindeer. Did any of you make those where you get the Nutter Butters and the pretzels and the M&M little noses? So I need to get the stuff for that tonight so she can put those together.
Kevin had a cookie exchange this weekend. So Kevin's my oldest. He's 20. He's over at Washington State University and he is in an apartment and with some other friends and a whole group of them were having a cookie exchange. And so he decided he was going to make kringla. And that is I believe it's Swedish. And it's a family. My mom got it from a friend of her mom in high school. Anyway, it is not a starter cookie. Like it's not the first thing you should make when you're making food, like cookies. Like you start with like chocolate chip cookies, right? No, he wanted to make kringla. And so he's like messaging me, do I have to use butter? I'm like, no, he asked me if he could use milk instead of buttermilk. And I was like, no. And then he's like, how do I soften butter? So it was a whole bunch of text messages and phone calls, but he did okay. He did okay. I asked him if he was going to start making the kringla from now on. He said no. Absolutely not.
That's so the guy, is this a guy thing or is it co-ed that they all decided to do cookies?
It's co-ed, the cookies, the cookie exchange.
That's fun and a good way to mingle too. Okay, so I have all my strips down here. So one thing, like I had to flip these, right? Because I wanted my hearts to go upside down. You'd have to think in your head pretty hard to make sure if you wanted to cut the swells the way I have them on the demo layout. Because I have more swell going down than I did, the whole thing being ½ inch means that the ½ inch isn't the bottom mark anymore. And so I wish I had probably elevated this another ½ inch or at least ¼ inch, and it would have given me more spacing down here. I'm going to leave it, but something to think about when you're doing it yourself. If you're doing it so both ways are going down, you might want to up that adhering a little bit if you want more space. Now, the benefit is I have more room for photos, which is the point of what we're doing, right? So it's fine. I have plenty of photos to fill the space with that. So we already talked about, I showed you my demo layout, all the options for the photos. And I have all of these photos. Like I said, some of them aren't the greatest lighting and then they didn't print as well. But I was thinking I would do probably something similar with the arrangement. I kind of liked having the variety of sizes. And when I was looking at these, some of them I know I can cut down to get some of those small sizes. Like him here when he's under the warmer, you know, I can get 2.75 out of that, which will be able to mat on the 2.75 or a 3-inch. And this one I could just cut down to his face and get that one there. So give your photos kind of a hard look. You know, how much can you pare down? This one, I probably want to keep his whole body. So this might be a good one under the 5x7 peekaboo. Same with the one of my mom. Those will probably be the peekaboo layers. And then probably finish up over here with this one, another 4x4, or I might be able to flip this one. This one could probably cut down a little smaller, and then I could do the 4x4 over here with that one. That would be similar. So that's probably how I'll go with my layout. And then the final step for decoration, if you want to, is I made this additional little trio banner that I cut down. So I'm going to show you how to make that real quick. You would need to cut additional strips. And I put those measurements here. You would want ½ inch from your big one and then ½ inch from one of your tonals and then ¼ inch from the other tonal. So I'm going to go with just a ¼ inch of my dark one. ½ inch of the statement. Yeah, I do look a lot like my mom. Someone's commenting on the photos. One of those photos on the Christmas layout is me. But yeah, my mom was the one that was there holding him. I thought I would have taken one of myself. I haven't found it yet when I went to visit that night. My mom and I they often think she's my sister. Okay, so I want my banner to look like this. I want it in that order, but it can be kind of challenging to figure out my length, cut all the strips the same length, and get a banner cut out of it, which is why using tape chips can help the back of it. So we'll go ahead and piece it together. So I'm going to just flip these pieces so they're all upside down. And then I'm going to use tape chips to basically paper weld them together from the back into one border. You don't have to worry about getting too exact on the ends because you can straight cut those if you need to. We won't be using the full length of this. It's true. He was born in October of 21, so the hospitals were still masking up for visitors at that point. So with mask on, it really does get hard. But you know what's bad, guys? I can look at pictures of my mom sometimes from the side or a different pose, and I'm like, is that me or mom? It's true. I'm like, even I have to like stop and take a double look. Blessed with good genetics. That's how I'll take that. If she looks like my sister. Okay, so then I can decide here, how long do I want my banner piece to be? I like the microtip scissors for this. So assuming I'm going to cut a 5x7 square, but here, these are going to cut down small like I did. And so I want to create a banner to come out tucked out from behind there. I have my dark color at the bottom. That's why I just cut that little 1/4 inch strip to make the whole thing a little bit smaller, but also have the same color trio. And I know I want it to be, about this long. I can eyeball it because I know I can tuck it underneath the photo and the map to get it. And then I'm just going to take my scissors and then I'm just going to angle in a cut and then flip it and cut again. And then I have that piece and I have all 3 strips tucked together. When I'm ready to adhere this, then you can either use additional tape or you can use the tape chips. I can peel up that adhesive and it will stick because it is double-sided down to where I want it. And then you can just let the paper be itself, let the decoration be in the paper. You could add embellishment or sticker cluster if you want. I have this whole strip too. I actually like this end too, the pointy end. That looks nice. You could do the whole flag at the top with new arrival or his name and the birthday, and then I could banner cut this end also. So I will work on my matting while Megan does her layout, but I wanted to show you the border again that I made with my extra pieces. So I have these extra pieces. It's hard to waste them. And then these pieces neither like store very well. When you try to stick them back with your paper, inevitably they get bent. So I made this border at the bottom. So I cut a 1.5-inch strip of the print or a print. And I will use, we'll see how it looks on this wood grain. If I don't like it, can always flip it back out. And then I also would need to choose. So what I did here is I punched an edge style border out of a white shimmer and I layered it underneath the 1.5-inch strip. So I'll have to choose a baby one to go there. But to put these pieces down, which was the whole point of all of this, is I'm just adhering them onto the paper. So I have 1 on that side and then 2 on the other side. So you can just play with what looks good. The wood grain is probably fine. It's cute. Then I can add the cardstock in so I can adhere that all down as a border. add a punch border if I want. And then up here at the top, these were also just, we all have pieces of scraps in our file here. I have these scraps, sitting. This one I had to cut. So whatever you have left, can just build another border. I could do these two pieces at the top and then maybe a border sticker down the middle, or just a real thin piece of cardstock, and then choose another base, and I have a whole nother layout with very little additional cuts. So just one idea if you wanted to use up those strips that you'll have left over from cutting those. So any questions in general? I will work on cutting down my photos while Meggan goes, so I can post this and you guys can see the final version. With the corners down here, I would suggest using embellishment clusters. Ideally something fatter. If you don't have something fatter, you can always cut an oval or a small circle with a cutting system and then make your own little embellishment cluster. But I definitely have some choices here. The little teddy bear would sit down there pretty nicely, to find things that are blue. And the blocks would sit over there, or the onesie. You could even journal on the onesie, depending on how much room I have. Oh, the heart would be cute. That I could put his stats right there, and then maybe the teddy bear over there. So a little embellishment for your corners, and pretty easy layout to pull together. So, all right, Meggan, I gave you almost the whole time, your whole full half hour.
You're so generous. Thank you.
So generous.
All right, so let me switch things around. All right, so as Tessa mentioned, I'm Meggan Jacks out here in what is today sunny Seattle, or at least where I am, it's sunny. It could be like raining, 10 miles south of me, but it's a beautiful day, a little chilly. I only have my Christmas tree up. I'm not listening to Christmas music yet. I'm not sure when I'll be quite ready for that. In my mind, it's still beginning of November, maybe. I don't know. Aren't we ready for Thanksgiving? Something like that. So I have a layout for you today. It is a little bit Christmas themed, though. That might be about as much Christmas as I'm really ready for these days. So I'm going to switch over to my overhead camera. And this is obviously a 2-page layout. I've given you some ideas on how to arrange some photos on here, but really what I really want you to see is the fact that you do have this kind of border effect going on around your layout with open space to be able to put your photos. So I show some photos. These are 4x4 mats done in the kind of the pinwheel configuration, but you can use the layout as needed. But what we need is we do need background paper. So the background here is the cranberry cardstock. I used one sheet of designer paper, which was the candy stripe, or the kind of that peppermint stripe out of the Christmas cheer pack. For this layout, I was able to use the backside of that paper. It has the gold polka dots on it. In the handout, I mentioned if you both sides don't want to cooperate with each other, you can always cut this piece here from a separate sheet of paper. I will actually be doing that in my sample, and I'll talk to you guys. I'll tell you why. We're going to need 2 sheets of cardstock or tonal paper that becomes kind of these larger page mats. I'm going to cut down some cardstock. We'll put it on here. And then of course we need our border elements. So what I'm using today is I started off by choosing what I wanted to be my decorative paper here. And I am using another diagonal stripe paper out of the C's Please collection. The way we cut these diagonal things work really well. So if you have a diagonal plaid, if you have a diagonal stripe, or if you have things that have no direction to them, like it's a non-directional paper, that would also work pretty well. The back side to this print are these fish. Now, these fish, they kind of have a direction to them. There is a definitive up and down. And what's going to happen when I cut my triangle pieces, I'm going to have some fish that will ultimately be swimming, I think, like upside down or kind of in a wonky fashion. And I didn't really want that to work. So instead of using the opposite side, this fish, to be my triangle piece in there, what I am going to do is I'm going to just cut some 3-inch squares, trim them on the diagonal with this solid core paper. This is Camel, which is out of one of the paper buffets. I'm going to just make my triangle pieces with that. So where you see these smaller triangles, mine is going to be the Camel, picks up that warm golden tone in the paper. My background is going to be, I'm actually using, is it marine blue out of the last solid core paper buffet we had, not the shimmer one, the one before that. It's very, very close to regular blue. You can see here it pairs nicely. This is going to be my background. It will actually be the mats too. If I flip this over, you can see I cut a C frame off the back. That portion that I pull out of the middle, I'm able to transfer to the top and cut into some mats. And then where you see the green here, or it's actually the avocado for the layout, I'm going to be using baby blue. Pulling in the lighter blue color from the mat or the designer paper. And I do have a border element. I've gone ahead and made, you need 2 border elements. I have made this using the cable weave border maker cartridge. I punched it in the Camel. That's why I've already got some cut pieces here. And then I backed it. I was trying to mimic the rope look here. So it's got kind of a darker beige to the front, and then behind it is a lighter. And so I backed it with Autumn Hay Shimmer. All right. So now we've got all of our pieces. We're going to go ahead and get started with the handout. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and cut down our 6x6 squares. So I am starting here with the designer paper, and I'm going to cut it into 4 6x6 squares. So I'll come over here to 6. And cut into the 6x6 squares. Now, if you really wanted to, you could probably mix and match how this, your squares if you really wanted to, but I'm going to use all the same. Maybe that's where you could use the flip side if you wanted to. You could use, maybe some of my squares could have been, the fish on one side, and so forth. So you really can mix up your pieces is kind of what I'm alluding to, mix and match things a little bit. So Amy is asking if the striped paper needs to be on a diagonal. One of the benefits to it being on the diagonal is that when you actually cut it here, you can see my triangles will actually then have a up and down stripe too, because we're going to cut it perpendicular to here. If you're cutting something that has a horizontal pattern, like a stripe that's side to side, it's not on the diagonal, you may have, it's going to look a little bit different. And let me see if I can come across a piece of paper that is similar to, that does that. Well, here, what we'll do really quick, because I just want to show what I'm talking about. So we're going to come in here and we're going to say we have vertical stripes. This is just an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. I'm just making a bunch of vertical stripes. I'm going to cut this down to 6 inches. So now, when I cut my paper on the diagonal, you can see my lines are going to be, they're just going to be tilted. So you just have to keep that in mind. They're just going to be tilted. So when you put them on your paper, your lines are going to be, they're not going to be vertical. They're going to be angled. They're going to be on the diagonal. If you are using something that has the diagonal stripe to it, so we're going corner to corner with our pattern, we want to make sure that we cut perpendicular to our pattern. We're not going to cut parallel. We're going to cut perpendicular. So when I put this in here, my pattern is going to be going horizontal. It doesn't matter if you have a non-directional print. If you do happen to have a vertical, it doesn't matter that way. But if you have that diagonal, you want to make sure that your pattern is going horizontal when you cut these. Let me show you the flip side to that would be is I could cut like this. And you see I have that vertical pattern. I don't want that. I want to make sure when I cut this, I'm cutting that diagonal perpendicular to my pattern. And I'm going to cut 3 of these in half. So there I've got the pieces I need. If you're making a single page layout, this can be done as a single page layout. You would only need to cut 2 of your squares, but I'm going to make this a double. And so I need 3 of my pieces cut. The 4th piece that I have can just remain scrap. Now next, if you are using the opposite side to your piece, and actually this may, I'm going to go ahead and cut this to show you guys what it looks like with the fish. We'll cut these just as it does in step 2. I was just looking at mine to see whether or not I'd be able to use this. You line up, you have your triangle, and you have your long edge of the diagonal from your square. That's your long edge of your triangle, and that's going to go on the 2-inch line. And you're going to then cut. And you just repeat that on all 6 pieces. Now, this is where if that reverse pattern does not work, this is where you could skip this step. If you know it's not going to work, you could just skip the step. You could still cut these off if you think you maybe want to use them as part of some other accent, because they will just get covered up anyway, the tips here. But like I said, if the back side of your paper, because not all paper patterns, you know, you may love one side and the reverse just doesn't work. You know, you're like, okay, well, that's great. I didn't like the reverse side to begin with, or it just doesn't, the patterns just don't quite work together well enough. I am going to go ahead and cut some 3x3 squares. I have that down in the notes down here. It says at the very bottom in step 5, when you're putting things together, if the reverse pattern doesn't work, you can go ahead and cut 3 3-inch squares and then cut those on the diagonal. So I'm cutting, that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to go ahead and cut some 3-inch squares. So that I have some other triangles to play with. And I mean, you can layer if you want to do 3 layers. I do 2 layers of these triangles around the outside, but you could definitely come in with more if you wanted to. And I actually, as I'm saying this, I might decide to go ahead and use a second accent piece here. 3 3-inch. So we'll have a total of 6 of these smaller triangles made from 3-inch squares. I am using the Steve Please paper pack. That's where this pattern paper came out of. And then this cardstock, or it's solid core shimmer or solid core paper, is called Camel. It was from a paper buffet from a little while ago. All right, so I've got some triangles cut. I've got all of my decorative pieces cut. I'm going to just slide those away so that I can see my handout. Next up, we're going to do step 3, which is we're going to cut the C frame out of our background paper. And here you can see I called it a C frame because it makes a C. If you don't like doing these types of things, that's okay. You can totally build your background on a solid piece of cardstock or your base album page. You just won't have the scrap pieces to cut the mats, but you can cut those from other cardstock. So if you don't feel like cutting this particular piece, don't worry about it. Just use your background. You're going to cut 2 of these though, if you do want to. And to cut the C frame, I'm going to go ahead, come in here, and I want it to be a 2-inch C frame, meaning that these pieces that you see here, these edges are all 2 inches wide. So I'm going to come down here. I have turned my trimmer horizontal because that's my preference when I'm cutting frames out of paper. I'm going to line up the top of my paper at 2 inches. And then I am going to go ahead and cut all the way to 10 inches, or you can bring your arm of or the blade over to 10 inches, and I can line my white up with where it says 10 inches. Right there, it says 10 inches. I line that white line up at 10 inches. You can also take the edge of your blade housing and bring it over to the 11 and go ahead and cut. And I'm gonna cut all the way to the edge. All right. Now, I am going to rotate 90 degrees to the right. So I've rotated 90 degrees. I'm going to line it back up at 2 inches. Now I want to cut from my 2-inch line over to my 10-inch line. I am making this cut right here on the side of my layout. Now I'm going to cut all the way over to 10. And then I'm going to rotate my paper 90 degrees, line it back up at 2 inches. And this time I'm going to start at 2 inches, and I'm going to cut all the way to the left. And there I've removed, this will be my paper that I use for mats, and here's my C frame. I need to repeat that one more time. So Sherry's asking about binder clips. You definitely could use binder clips here if you want to. The thing about the binder clips is because the cuts are all, if you cut them in order, where each cut is different from the previous one. Binder clips can be really nice when you have repetitive cuts. And since this one we are cutting, we do from 10 to 0, rotate the paper, 2 to 10, rotate the paper, 2 to 12. It makes it a little bit, it can be a little bit more troublesome, but you certainly can set binder clips if you wanted to. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to start at 10 and cut all the way to the right. Rotate my paper, line it back up at 2 inches. I'm going to start at 2 inches and cut all the way here to 10. Rotate my paper one more time. So I've got my cut piece here. I need to make that top. Start at 2 and cut all the way to 12. I'm going to set those middle pieces to the side for now. I don't need them. I'm going to grab my cutting mat. And I'm going to consider this my left page. And I'm going to do some dry fitting first. Just putting my pieces on. I'm going to center them. And you can kind of center, you can kind of see where the, if you're using the 13 by 13 inch mat, where the pieces kind of come to the middle, the edges of your triangle just kind of meet where this triangle meets here. I can see, I'm going to center it kind of along this edge here. If you're looking at the ruler, it's about 1.75 inches from the corners themselves. So I can come down here from this upper left-hand corner. I can come down. I can say I start at 10.25 is where the tip of this is. Same over here, 10.25. At the bottom, I can come here, find 10.25 and put the edge of my piece, and that's going to line up really well. Now, this is where I can try to figure out how I want this to sit. Now, I could come in. Do I want I don't know if my fish are all going to work. In my mind, they weren't going to work. But as I was cutting them, I thought, well, maybe they will. They're not bad. I really, and the other part too is I don't know if I need the fish. The pictures I am going to use with this are from when we were in uh, the San Juan Islands, and we didn't really go fishing. We didn't really see a lot of fish. That wasn't kind of the purpose of our trip. So I might just still use, well, actually, what I might do is something like that. I still might put them in there and then just use my beige paper to come over the top and give myself just a little bit more depth, more, the brown, the darker blue, and then my paper is going to sit on it about like such. This is where I have to make my decision. And maybe I just want to do, I think I do like the darker blue in there. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. I'm using repositionable adhesive. I want to make sure I get the corners really well. I also want to make sure that my paper stays lined up on my cutting mat, the C frame, because I am using that frame or the cutting mat to help me align my paper. Like I said, when you're aligning your paper, if you start one of the corners at 10 and 1/4 inch, you should have everything nice and centered. And we'll just keep putting these pieces on. And then we will go ahead and put on the smaller triangle that we cut off the tops of the larger one. And these we're going to line up. I think they get lined up at, yeah, just at the tip here is coming over to 3 3/4 inch. That is centered. And then I will add the extra layer here. I'm going to bring this down a little bit. I know from when putting this together, I am actually going to be covering up almost an inch of the inside of this frame. So this section here is all just going to be covered up. So I just want to make sure that my piece goes on straight, and I will trim up the edges where things overhang. All right, so I've got the C frame part done. So now what I need to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut. I didn't take a picture of it here, but you can see step 6 is I need to cut my top cardstock is going to be cut down to 11 by 10. So I'm going to cut off 2 inches, or I'll cut it to 10 inches wide first so I can get a 2-inch strip that's 12 inches long. And then I will cut this down to 11 inches. And then this paper is going to fit right here. It gets set, if you put your C-frame back on your cutting mat lined up, you'll see that this piece we just cut, this light blue, is going to sit 1 inch from the top, 1 inch from the bottom. And if you have it flush along this edge, it should be 1 inch from the side over here. I'm gonna grab some regular adhesive. I've got a full inch here to work with, so I am just going to run my tape runner along that inside edge. Double check that you're lined up again. All right, now what I need to do is I do have some overhang here. So I'm going to come in with my trimmer and just clean that up. You may or may not have that overhang depending on how you did your pieces. But here we've got that whole side. Now the other side is put together the exact same way. I will actually put it together. And then what you do after you put it together, it rotates around to be the other side. If you need to, because maybe you do have some directional paper that you need to keep an eye on your patterns, you can go ahead and assemble it in the reverse, but it will match up this direction. Now, the other part I mentioned is I do have a border element, because let me take my mats. I have that 8 by 10 piece of paper that I cut out of the middle of my C-frame. I'm going to go ahead and cut this. This is my 8-inch width. I'm going to go ahead and cut this at 4 inches, cut it in half at 4 inches. So I cut one at 4. I'm going to go ahead and cut the other one. Sometimes when you do these cutout frames, the paper is not perfect. I can see here that my it just needs to be trimmed down to be 4 inches. And then I'll cut at 5 inches. Cut at 5 inches to make those 4 by 5 inch mats. Now you may or may not need the 4 by 5 inch mats. It really depends on if you know what photos you're going to use. These 4 by 5 mats just fit really well on the layout. But if you don't know the photos that you're including, you can definitely wait to trim your mats. But you've got some scrap paper if you cut that C-frame to use. So if I put these on in a pinwheel configuration, which usually works well for me in terms of my photos, I try to take a variety of both vertical and horizontal. And so the pinwheel is always a good one for me to work with. You can see here I've got a space over here that works really well for a border element. So like I said, I used the Cable Weave Border Maker cartridge. And the Cable Weave came as part of the Black Friday promotion last year. But if you are working with an advisor, you can talk to them to see whether they can get one for you. It's available currently as part of a last chance sale open to advisors. Or you can chat with Tessa and I if you do not have Cable Weave and you decide you must have it. All right. So there is the left page of my layout. The right page is going to look the exact same. I have some photos out of, like I said, we went to the San Juan Islands. And so I have some photos of us, I think just like on the beach and stuff like that, just miscellaneous photos. This will be a great layout for that. It has a little bit of a nautical theme to it, but it's not tropical because trust me, the San Juan Islands are not tropical. They are up in the Puget Sound, just north of, just off of the Seattle coast up towards Canada. Oh my gosh, I'm having a moment. I cannot come up with the right words. So I see Steph is commenting that rope would work too. I did debate whether I was going to use rope, the rope border maker cartridge. That was what I had also thought about, but I stuck with cable weave. So I'm not going to put together the second side because then we would definitely roughly be over. We'd be probably at that almost that power 90. And so we'll leave it here. I'll work on the second half. I probably will not have photos for mine to show with it all put together because I still have to print all those photos. And I have a lot of photos to print, so I'm not going to use my little at-home printer. I'll probably send those off because I probably have 200 or 300 photos I'm going to be printing. So thanks for joining us today for our daytime edition of Power Hour. It's very exciting to have as many of you. Wow, over 100. That's awesome. You guys are amazing. I'm not sure how many of you maybe stuck in on a lunch hour if you're in the mid part of the country. In the East Coast, it's getting a little bit, it's to be a late lunch, right? Tessa, have you even had lunch yet? No.
I did because I stopped and got Campbell lunch on our way to school. So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
usually I eat lunch around now anyways, but did you
yeah.
see the question people were asking? Someone asked if we each used each other's layouts, and I'm confident Megan's never made mine. And I actually don't really use hers either. But I do have one in queue. I know I will go back and make that soccer one. Use the soccer ball.
Yes. And so Tessa, I know, has used my layouts for make and takes at your
Yes, for
events.
sure. Every treats. Yes.
And because that's what she's going to tell me in January. She's like, will you please make my make and take handout for me by making it be your January power hour? And maybe this time it'll be one of your own. I mean, you're certainly capable of doing that. I think you just decide you want something different. I don't know.
We usually have a better little technique twist.
Oh,
And
that's
I don't.
actually what it comes down to is I tell her, well, what do you want to sell? What do you have extras of? What do you want me to use? And it's a fun, it's just a fun little challenge for I think each of us. I have made a few of Tessa's for sure. I went back when we first started doing the scrap challenges. I was really trying to do all the ones that she shared. Like I could do scrap challenge too. And then it kind of fell apart. I mean, I just couldn't keep up with the stuff. So we do sometimes use each other's things, but probably not as frequently as you might think, just from a standpoint of, I know personally when I'm scrapbooking, I'm always thinking, how can I create content to share with you? So if it's a power hour, it's a page makers, it's, some other content that we're creating. So we don't always have time to swing back and pick up on each other's things. Like I don't always get to go back and redo a layout that I really liked from a class that we did before, because if I've got these photos, they didn't go on the layout to the first one. Well, I probably have a new layout that I need to create. So, but it's still fun to do that. And I know I was trying in 2023, and I think Tessa was too, and she's better about it than I am about getting photos on the layouts as we do Power Hour, because that is sometimes for us the easiest way for us to actually get pages done is to do that. This did not work for me today. I admitted defeat on it and didn't stress it out. So that's why we have just mats to show you where photos could go.
But I was impressed. Like when I go back and look how much I have done just from the classes, I'm like, we really do a lot.
Yeah. I mean,
it's a good thing.
For me, I like that goal that I put on myself to do because I did try to do that more often this year in 2023 instead of having just stacks of layouts I created. I never actually went back and put photos on. I'm not always the best at that. Largely because like I said, if I've come across some photos, I'm like, okay, I can either go use an old layout that I've already got done, or I can create new content. So I'm in a little bit of a different position from some of you that are just scrapbooking your albums. I'm also trying to create new content and use new things. So it sometimes is what am I gonna do? Right. But I did mention it just a few seconds ago about Scrap Challenge. Our winter frolic, a Scrap Challenge is coming up. It's going to start January 1st. And it's 8 weeks of kind of a bash your stash. We do challenges, we have throwback layouts, and it's not like, it's very self-paced. We keep giving you ideas every week, but if you can't scrapbook that week because you're headed south for a few-week vacation or going on a cruise or some other warm weather adventure, that's okay. You can come when you get back. You have all sorts of ideas to work with. But it's to me, it is probably the best way to pass the months of January and February, which are really dark and kind of dismal for here for me in Washington. So I'm always excited to have Scrap Challenge, but registrations on our website at meganandtessa.com. These layouts, how long are we going to give them till when do you want just a week or do you want till the end of the month?
The end of the month.
We're going to do the end of the month. So you guys need to post these by the end of 2023. You have the rest of the year to get these done. Doesn't that sound delightful? You have the rest of the year.
I feel
know.
like we need to have the December challenge is called Print Your Photos in preparation for the winter challenge.
Yes, it should be, because I need to do that for sure. But you guys can go ahead and share these into the ideas and inspiration group. There is the hashtag on the layout or on the handout. If you please use the hashtag. And remember, if you post one layout with the hashtag and then you post the second layout with the hashtag, you've got 2 entries. So that is really fun there. I mentioned Winter Frolic. Is there anything else I needed to mention? I see Kelly's asking about Miss Kitty. She's been banished from the scrapbook room because I need a cleanup challenge again. Can we have another one of those too, Tessa? Like, you got to clean your scrap room, your scrap space.
Yeah.
So she's only been banished because of my own inability to keep the place clean, and she likes to get into a little bit of everything. And once she has bent so much paper, I can't handle it anymore. She also is chewing on a couple of different things, and so we're working through some of her chewing bad habits to do that. But I hopefully have some layouts to share, some photos of her, because she's adorable. She's so cute.
Does this mean since you locked her out, is she out there climbing your Christmas tree?
I don't know. No, I don't think she's out there climbing. She does some things, I think, when she wants attention. And I think that's like even the chewing stuff. I think she just wants attention. And so you have to really just be like, okay, I'm going to take a few minutes here and wear you out, play with you, and then you can go sleep for the rest of the day. So she probably really just needs another cat.
Okay.
And I'm not sure how that's going to work. So the kids will all be home here in a couple weeks. So she'll have 2 weeks of, mayhem. And I'm sure that'll be delightful. So, all right. Thanks for joining us today. We will have this video ready for you guys later today or first thing tomorrow morning. I don't think there's any edits to the handouts, so those should be all good to go. And we look forward to seeing what you guys share with us in the Ideas and Inspiration group. Edith is just saying that she just got in too late to the video. And I just answered a question. Yeah, the video will be able. So if you joined us late, maybe you missed Tessa's or whatever, you'll be able to watch the thing in its entirety a little bit later. It'll be on our YouTube channel. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so. We like having all those subscribers, and then you should get an email with all that information. I do not have the date of the January the Power Hour. I don't think so. I don't know. I'm waiting on Tessa because her schedule's by far worse than mine. And so we're gonna
about that, but we'll figure it out.
But we didn't decide. We do that a lot. Yeah, we do. So, all right. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful holiday. I hope it's safe, warm, and wonderful with your family and friends. And I look forward to hearing about all the stories next time we see. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Merry Christmas.